Lights, camera, action.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, guys.
Welcome back to the podcast. This week, we're going to be talking about Batman Begins, which is just in time for Halloween, right?
Right.
Yep, this is going to be releasing on the 28th, I believe. Sound right? Yeah, 28th. Halloween is on the 31st, so we're right in that happy Halloween area, so which is perfect because the villain of this movie is Scarecrow.
Yes.
Or one of the villains, I guess I should say.
And, bats and Halloween.
Oh, yeah, bats. yeah, there you go. Nice. Okay, cool. Well, without further ado, let's dive right in.
All right, so Batman Begins was released on June 15th of 2005. It was directed by Christopher Nolan. It is starring Christian Bale. I'm sorry. I get it wrong every time. Is it Cillian or Killian?
So I used to think it was Cillian, which is why you and I both kind of have that ingrained in our minds, but it's Cillian Murphy.
Okay. Cillian Murphy, Katie Holmes, Michael Caine, Liam Neeson, Gary Oldman,
Yes.
Morgan Freeman, and Tom Wilkinson. This is our second Christian Bale movie of the season.
Yeah. Started out with Ford versus Ferrari, which if you haven't listened to that episode, great episode. Lots of true history in there. Go check it out.
Yes. Good plug, John.
Thank you. Also, I forgot to say in the intro, we have a guest this episode, and it's my brother, Josh, who was on Gladiator last season. So get psyched, because we're going to have this guest in the studio here soon.
Yes. Okay. Back to details.
Yes.
This movie was distributed by sorry, I lost my train of thought. This movie was distributed by Warner Bros. It has a runtime of 2 hours and 20 minutes. It's rated PG-13. Its budget was $150 million, and box office total was $373.7 million.
Very nice. You said budget was $150 million?
Correct.
Okay. Very nice. Do you have anything else for us before I jump into production details?
Yes, always facts.
Oh, yes. Fun facts. Yes, please.
So I actually have quite a few, like a lot. So
okay.
I'll try to make it snappy.
All right, go ahead.
Okay. So first one, to prevent script leaks at the beginning, Batman Begins was initially called The Intimidation Game, and it was title was used to gain media interest and attention and things, but this name was also used with cast members. So in fact, Michael Caine read the script title and he assumed that the movie was a gangster movie when he first read it.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So second one, the movie's actual title went through a lot of changes. It was known as Batman 5 and Batman the Frightening. Those are just a couple examples before
those were working titles. They weren't actually considering them. It's just interim.
So that was, before they decided on Batman Begins.
Right. By the way, if you talk about the tumblers, I do have some stuff about that in the production details.
I don't think I have anything on that.
Okay, cool.
I don't think so. I could be wrong. Yeah. Next one. A lot of the script was written in Christopher Nolan's garage, and the movie was so heavily guarded that the Warner Bros. Executives who were in charge of greenlighting the project actually were never given the script to look through. They had to come to Christopher Nolan's garage to be able to look at it, and it had to be in the presence of the writers.
Wow.
So they couldn't take it with them or anything like that. It was a very heavily guarded thing.
No, that's awesome. And I have a lot of respect for stuff like that. I mean, obviously this was all going on during early 2000s, if it was released in 2005, we're talking 2003, 2004 production timeline. Mm-hmm. But especially today, with these really high profile, iconic movies, you have these intellectual properties like Batman that everybody knows, recognizes, and most people love. Stuff gets leaked constantly, and it really becomes frustrating to be on Instagram or Facebook because it's oh, I really actually didn't want to know that.
Right.
And so, yeah, I have a lot of respect for going the extra mile to do something like that.
Yeah, for sure. And it's been a minute since I have had some casting details, but it's always so interesting to me. So I threw some in here too.
Sweet.
So Cillian Murphy was actually originally considered to play Bruce Wayne,
Yes.
as well as Jake Gyllenhaal. Is that how you say his last
Uh-huh.
name? Okay. Heath Ledger and Henry Cavill. Is that how you say his name? Cavill.
Which is very...
Superman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He played Superman in Man of Steel, as well as a slew of other movies, Justice League, Batman vs. Superman, a couple of others. But yeah, I had no idea. I knew about Cillian Murphy, and I knew about Jake Gyllenhaal. I did not know about Henry Cavill, so that's very cool.
Did you know about Heath Ledger?
I didn't, which that's also very surprising to me.
Yeah. So basically what happened with that was he like auditioned and everything. And Christopher Nolan was like, Christopher Nolan and Heath Ledger both agreed that he wasn't quite right to play Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
But Christopher Nolan loved him and loved his performance. So when, that's why he was cast as the Joker later.
Yeah. Which was phenomenal.
Phenomenal. So then, as far as Rachel goes, also, sorry, there were a lot more actors that were considered for the role of Bruce Wayne, but they were just a lot of them that I wasn't really familiar with.
Yeah.
And it would have just been a really long list. So that's why I only picked a few.
Yeah.
Same thing for Rachel. A couple actresses that were considered to play her were Claire Danes and Reese Witherspoon. Then next fact is that the Batsuit was actually really uncomfortable and really heavy. Christian Bale said in an interview that it felt like he felt really claustrophobic in it, and it weighed 40 pounds. And he said it helped him get into the right mindset for playing Batman because the uncomfortable suit made him be in a bad mood. So
Yeah.
actually, you know what? I guess I do have something about what you were saying, so I'll skip that one.
Okay.
Next. Some of these are just kind of short snippet ones. Christian Bale lost his voice 3 times during the movie process from doing his Batman voice.
Interesting.
And we kind of talked about this in Ford versus Ferrari about, Christian Bale is a method actor.
Yes.
He undergoes a lot of physical, like weight loss, weight gain, like just lots of really trying things. So because of his part in what was the movie that he was really, really light in? Like he had to
I
lose
think
a
it
lot of
was
weight.
The Machinist or La Machinist or something like that.
So he weighed about 120 pounds when he was under consideration for this part for Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
So obviously he was told he needed to get bigger. And Christopher Nolan told him that he needed to get as big as he could be. So Christian Bale underwent like this 6-month like diet and exercise regimen thing and ended up weighing about 220 pounds. And then it was decided that he had become too big and quickly had to shed about 20 pounds to have like, a more muscular and like leaner build or frame or whatever.
Yeah, he was so big that they had to restructure the bat suit that it didn't fit.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yep.
Yeah. So, but Christian Bale described that whole experience as just like, it was just unbearable. Like a just big physical thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when he was doing The Machinist or La Machinist, I apologize for anybody who likes that movie or who has seen it. His diet consisted of an apple and a cigarette per day. And that was it.
That's insane.
Yeah. But he got down to like, I think 93 or 97 for that role.
Oh, that's crazy.
And then immediately went to 220 for Batman Begins.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so 2 more. Ever since this movie, Batman Begins, Michael Caine has appeared in every single Christopher Nolan movie with the exception of Oppenheimer. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's very cool. And Michael Caine's officially retired from acting now. So
at the age of what, like 90 something?
Yes.
And then my last fact is that while shooting on the streets of Chicago, a person accidentally crashed into the Batmobile. The driver was apparently drunk, and he said that he hit the car because he was in this state of panic because he thought that the Batmobile was an invading alien spacecraft.
I've actually heard that before.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
that's crazy.
That's everything that I have.
Okay. Well, I don't have a ton of production details, but I do have some. So, Batman Begins started filming in March 2004. Shooting locations include Iceland, London, New York, Chicago, and England. And in classic Christopher Nolan style, he built practical sets and practical effects were heavily utilized as opposed to like CGI, including not one, but 4 full-sized functioning tumblers were created for this movie, each costing $250,000 a piece.
Wow.
Yeah. Each tumbler was capable of going over 100 miles per hour. They could all go from 0 to 60 in 5 seconds. They were all able to perform very sharp and tight turns in city streets. They had a custom steering. I mean, everything about the tumblers that were built were entirely bespoke. They were fully custom and fabricated specifically for this. But their steering specifically was very unique because it was a monster-sized vehicle that could perform these really precise, sharp turns. And then last but not least, it could perform a self-propelled launch of up to 30 feet.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, which you actually see in the film when the Narrows, they lift the bridge and it's kind of blocked off and the tumbler goes flying in there with the jet engine activated and everything, which was also done for real in Chicago. They actually lifted the bridge and did that shot practically.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's insane. But that's all I have as far as production details go.
I'm sorry if I missed it. Did you say how big it was exactly? Like, did you have the exact measurements?
No, I didn't.
Okay,
I mean,
I
it's
have
huge.
Them.
Yeah, go for it.
So that's why I skipped over it because I wasn't sure how much you said or were going to say. So like you said, it was fully functioning and it was built from the ground up, and it was 9 feet wide and 16 feet long. And apparently, even though Christian Bale did, a lot of his own stunts, he was not allowed to drive the Batmobile.
Yeah, actually, the stuntmen who drove the vehicles, they had to train for, I didn't write it down, it was either 4 or 6 months before they were allowed to take it on the streets of Chicago.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was literally their job day in and day out. They were just driving the tumbler, learning how to drive it because there's literally nothing like it. Mm-hmm. So, pretty cool.
Yeah.
But, all right. So, I think it's time for us to issue our rating, right?
It is.
Okay. So, I will go ahead and go first. This one is tough for me because, as many of you probably know, I am a huge comic book nerd. I actually have some of the comics that this movie was inspired by. I love Batman. He's one of my favorite characters. But I don't know. This movie for a long time was one of my favorite Batman movies. And there's nothing wrong with it. So don't get me wrong. But I think I'm going to give it like an 85.
Wow, really?
Yeah, I really like this movie. I think it's a great movie. But I think Batman has been done better in other instances. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. It's just, it's really good. I think there are better Batman movies. Not that that makes this one bad per se. I do have a few actual critiques of the film that goes beyond just like comic book stuff, because I do have some of that, like, oh, this was different in the comics here. Not taking into consideration that there are a few actual like film critiques I have, but outside of that, I don't know. It's hard for me because it is really well done. There is a lot of heart, there is a lot of emotion, and Christopher Nolan, as well as David S. Goyer, who wrote the film script, did a really, really good job of getting you to care about Bruce Wayne as well as Batman.
Right.
But, which I think was kind of a shift from the prior Batman movies, which, correct me if I'm wrong, but you haven't seen any of the like old ones, like George Clooney or Michael Keaton, Val Kilmer. Okay. I didn't think so, but I wanted to double check. So it was kind of a shift. This was a lot more grounded, a lot more realistic, a lot more emotion. Not that those were bad movies, but this one was definitely a turning point in the superhero genre as a whole, but especially for Batman. So I have a lot of love and respect for it, but I'll just be totally straightforward. The 2022, the Batman movie with Robert Pattinson, is hands down like my favorite Batman movie. I know a lot of people would be like, oh no, The Dark Knight or The Dark Knight Rises is the best. And I can get into that later, but having seen from a comic fan's perspective, Batman done so well on screen by what they did in the Batman, it kind of makes it a little bit tough for me rewatching a version that's still very good, really good, honestly, but I think they captured his character well in the new one.
Yeah.
So, anyways, what is your rating?
Before you said 85, I was actually thinking 86.
Really?
Yeah. Kind of for similar reasons that you had said, just like I mean, it was a good movie. Like I enjoy watching it, but I do like John said, I haven't seen any of the older Batman movies like that came before this, but the other Christian Bale Batman movies, I think I might like better.
Yeah. And
I also like the most recent Robert Pattinson Batman better, I think, too. So that's really the only reason, just because like I've got to leave room on the scale for those since I like them better.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, too, we're using our scale a little bit better, at least these last few episodes compared to last season. We're not keeping everything in the 90s.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard because we like the movies that we're picking.
That's why we're picking them.
Exactly. So, anyways. Okay. So, I do have some points that I want to talk about just from like a comic fan's perspective.
Okay.
I will try to keep it brief because I know we also have Josh coming on as a guest here shortly, but I do want to dig into some of this stuff.
All right, let's hear it.
So these are not the film criticisms that I have here. These are some of just like, I'm a comic book nerd. I'm going to critique a few things, but one of my biggest pet peeves in this movie is that they choose to have you have two villains in this movie. You have Scarecrow, who Cillian Murphy plays, does a phenomenal job. And then you have Liam Neeson, who plays, originally he's introduced to us as Henry Ducard, but then it's later revealed that he's playing Ra's al Ghul. Yes, I said Ra's al Ghul, not Ra's al Ghul. And that is overall like a glaring frustration for me in this movie, that they pronounce a character's name wrong for the entire movie. And then as well as The Dark Knight Rises, they pronounce it wrong. And there's like this, I don't know if they doubled down on this decision or what, but literally the creator of the character has said, no, it is pronounced Ra's al Ghul, but they pronounced it Raz. And it's very frustrating for me just because it's like, I don't know, if you know what it's like to hear something mispronounced and you're just like,
yes.
like it, you know, makes your skin crawl. That's how I feel every time I watch this movie when they say that, because there are so many people who know nothing about comics, but they just, you know, like, oh, this is a good movie, or I like Batman.
Like me.
Right. Like in a general sense. Oh, Ra's al Ghul. No, it is Ra's al Ghul. So that is a definite pet peeve of mine.
How is it spelled?
R-A''S. It is an Arabic name.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, I can understand why they pronounced it wrong, but they should have done research ahead of time. They should have figured that out.
And so that just for me is like, you know, it's not a huge deal, but it definitely takes me out of the movie watching experience as somebody who knows that. Also, a pet peeve of mine, Henry Ducard and Ra's al Ghul are not the same person. They are two completely separate characters in the comics, and they decided to like amalgamize, whatever. They did an amalgamation of the two characters into one here. And that is like, for me, like, I don't get it. I guess because they wanted to have like a plot device to be a twist. But Henry Ducard in the comics is somebody who trained Bruce Wayne, helped him learn some of his martial arts, and that's about as far as he goes. He's appeared a couple other times in recent years, but they're very sporadic. He's not a heavily used character. And Ra's al Ghul has no association with him. Ra's al Ghul did not train Batman with the League of Shadows. Ra's al Ghul actually is one of the very, very few people to know that Bruce Wayne is Batman, but he didn't know that because he trained Bruce and then put two and two together like you see in the movie. What happened in the comics was that Ra's al Ghul, he's the head of the League of Shadows. He's this great assassin who's lived for centuries and centuries because he has this thing called the Lazarus Pit, which grants him immortality. If he dies, they throw his body in there and he basically is resurrected. So anyways, he's very rich, very skilled in fighting. And once he gets word that there's this crime fighter in Gotham, he starts tracking him. He puts two and two together that in order to do what he's doing, he has to be wealthy, and deducts that Bruce Wayne is Batman, and basically it jumps him when he's not expecting it and calls him out on it. And Bruce basically confesses because he has to protect himself. The reason for that is because Ra's al Ghul wanted to track down Batman so that he could marry Ra's al Ghul's daughter, Talia. The only reason he wanted to find Batman and do any of this was because he wanted him to marry his daughter so that Batman could be a worthy heir to the League of Shadows and carrying it on.
Gotcha.
And he is a villain and an enemy. They don't see eye to eye because Ra's kills, Batman doesn't kill, and conflict ensues anyways. But so that's just another little tidbit there.
This is off topic, but I just wanted to ask because while I was researching, I had come across this. Is it true that the character Rachel was completely made up for this movie? She doesn't appear in the comics?
I can't say with like 100% certainty, but
Okay.
I can say with 99.99% certainty that yes, that is true.
Okay.
As far as my knowledge goes, and that's something I didn't research because I will say, Batman's been around for a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
I have not read every Batman comic,
Right.
but I am very knowledgeable in his mythos and history, and I do have a lot of Batman comics. And she has never appeared or ever been mentioned, and she plays no critical role in the comics at all. So I believe she's non-existent.
Okay. I just wanted to check.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain, but yeah. So another thing that is just a tidbit here. In the movie, when Bruce's parents are murdered, it's because they're at the opera, and Bruce sees some actors that are like portraying bats on the stage, and then he gets reminded that he fell in the well or whatever, and those bats scared him. So he wants to leave. They end up getting jumped by a guy who needs money, and he shoots them. Well, in the traditional comic book origins, that's not the case. What happens is they're at a movie theater, and Bruce and his family are watching The Mask of Zorro. And I know you've not seen the Zorro movies, but you at least...
I'm familiar with them.
He's like a superhero,
Right.
essentially. And then after leaving the movie, they take a shortcut through an alley. His parents get murdered. Well, the reason that Bruce ends up becoming a superhero is because of having watched The Mask of Zorro on the night that his parents were murdered. Christopher Nolan intentionally changed this because he wanted to emphasize two things, that being the importance that bats had for Bruce, because he felt like it was integral to the audience's understanding of why would he choose to be Batman for just a random reason. We really need to drive this home, which for me, I guess it's a little bit different because we live in a post Marvel Cinematic Universe world. But I feel like audiences are generally accepting of that type of stuff, and that it's like, for me personally, I could care less if it's because Bruce fell down a well and then he saw a bat on stage and 1, 2, 3 connect the dots.
Right.
That's why he wants to have a bat. Sure, there's good emotion there and good connection in the sense of oh, well, they should be I want them to be scared of it like I'm scared. Like, I can see it, but I don't necessarily feel like it's that necessary. Maybe not as much as Nolan was thinking it was.
Right.
And then the second thing that he wanted to emphasize was that the idea of being a superhero, he wanted that to be original to Bruce. He didn't want it to come from like inspiration from having watched a superhero movie or anything like that. And that's why in Christopher Nolan's mind, he's adamant that in this universe of Batman, there are no other superheroes. There's no Superman, Flash, Green Lantern, none of that. It's only Batman because he's the only one who's had that idea. That's basically his kind of idea of creating this universe. And I don't necessarily take issues with those things. Like, this is kind of a Elseworlds type story. They're not trying to recreate the comics one-to-one.
Right.
This is a very realistic military version of Batman. But I guess just interesting to throw out there.
Yeah.
One thing I will say that I did appreciate is that they had the killer of Batman's parents be Joe Chill. He is the guy that killed Batman's parents in the comics, and the only other on-screen depiction of Thomas and Martha Wayne being killed prior to this, because after this it's happened on screen at least one other time. But prior to this, the only other time was in the first Batman movie with Tim Burton, 1989, and they had the killer of Batman's parents be the Joker, which is idiotic in my opinion. In my personal opinion, it's very dumb, and it was a very Hollywood idea. But anywho, those are just some of the things that I wrote down as notes. There are some other things that are on my mind, but I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts?
I think that's really interesting, and I'm glad that you brought those things up, just because like for people listening like me who have never read a comic book in their life, it's good to hear those things, just because I feel like, I don't know, I just feel more knowledgeable now about the character. And now when I'm, watching the next Batman movies, if we ever cover those, which I hope we do, because I love the Dark Knight trilogy. But I don't know. I appreciate you saying those things.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I mean, we'll obviously see. I definitely want to cover the most recent Batman movie at some point in the future, The Batman with Robert Pattinson, just because for me, that really depicts the world's greatest detective very, very well. But we're not here to talk about that right now.
Right.
So
maybe next Halloween.
Yeah, maybe which movie actually takes place on Halloween.
We have to.
Yeah. I really wanted to do it for this year, but I felt like maybe it's too new. I don't know.
Yeah.
But anywho, what are some of your favorite scenes for this movie?
Oh, shoot. I forgot to write down my favorite scenes.
Oh, that's okay. Is there anything that immediately comes to mind?
I like when Batman first comes to, what's his name? Why can't I think of his name? The deputy, start with an M.
I don't know who you're talking about.
The guy that he meets with all the time that works with the police.
Jim Gordon?
Yes.
That Gary Oldman plays?
Yes.
Who later becomes Commissioner Gordon?
Yes. Okay. I don't know why I thought it started with an M. Anyways, when he goes to, is he a police officer? Is it?
Yeah.
Or okay.
Yes.
That's what I thought.
Most definitely he's a police officer.
I just want to make sure.
Which, on that note, Jim Gordon's character is heavily influenced in this film by Jim Gordon's depiction in the comic Batman Year One, which I actually have sitting next to me right now. But that comic focuses heavily on Jim Gordon before he's commissioner.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Anyways,
I like when their first interaction when, at first, you think that he's holding a gun to the back of his head and he's asking for information and stuff. And then we find out that it's just a stapler. And I thought that was funny. But I just appreciate their relationship and the trust that they have, but also that it's not full trust at some points. And Yeah, and then I also really like the relationship with Lucius, and just like
Yeah.
that like after he gets fired, and he says, well, oh, I don't have security clearance anymore, and
Right.
Bruce is like, that hasn't, or what does he say? That hasn't stopped you before? No, that's not right.
Yeah, it's something along
to
those
that effect.
lines.
So I like the different relationship dynamics that Bruce has with different characters.
Yeah.
So
I agree. I think one thing that this movie does really well is explore Bruce Wayne and kind of, like you said, his relationships and stuff like that. And I think Christian Bale as well as Christopher Nolan explore Bruce Wayne really, really well. But for me as a Batman fan, that is a little bit of a detractor. And here's why. They actually explicitly touch on this at the end of the movie, but it's just kind of one of those like mouth service things as opposed to like seeing it on screen. Mm-hmm. You see it some. You definitely do. I'm not discrediting what Nolan has done. However, it almost, for me, feels like a little bit of telling rather than showing.
right.
But one of the biggest things about Batman, and in the comics as well as it's done really, really well in Justice League, the animated series back from the early 2000s, is that Bruce Wayne is actually Batman's mask, so to speak. That Batman is the real person and that he just utilizes Bruce Wayne as a mask as opposed to Bruce Wayne putting on the Batman mask.
So you're talking about like when Rachel says that to him?
Yes. Mm-hmm. She says that directly to him at the end of the movie, and you definitely see that play out in the sense of like Bruce, when he has those girls with him, like he acts like he's an idiot at the hotel and, really plays up the fact that he's wealthy, as well as when he has the birthday party at his house, he pretends to be drunk so that he can get everybody out safely. Like they do that well. So I don't want to minimize that part of it. But one thing that I guess I would say I'd appreciate about the Batman with Robert Pattinson, as well as Batman being depicted in other mediums, is that you see very little of Bruce Wayne himself, meaning that like in the Batman with Robert Pattinson, you have a lot of screen time where the actor is actually in costume. You actually see Robert Pattinson outside of the Batsuit probably twice in the movie, as opposed to here, you see Christian Bale outside of the Batsuit for the majority of the movie. And the times where he, quote unquote, suits up is like it's in there, but it's not very frequent.
Right.
And that for me, there's nothing wrong with it. It's a very good way of telling a story, connecting with an audience. So I'm not necessarily like saying like, hey, that was a bad choice, because I get why they did it, and I think it was very successful. There's a lot of people that love this movie, and I do think it's a great movie. But for just me and my preferences and my, having read the comics and everything, you see very, 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 very little of Batman outside of the cape and cowl. It's pretty much just him in the cape and cowl, because he's so addicted to being the Batman that it's all consuming. That's all he is, and he can't not be the Batman. So I don't know, that it's neither here nor there, I guess, in terms of like it takes me out of the movie or anything, but I don't know, just kind of something that is on my mind as I think about this movie specifically, and kind of overarching the Christopher Nolan Batman movies.
Yeah, that makes sense.
One thing I would say as a legitimate criticism of the film is that I don't feel like it was necessary to have both Scarecrow and Ra's al Ghul in the movie.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, and honestly, I would think that if any other director took this on, that it would potentially have come off as being overstuffed. I think Christopher Nolan did a really good way of keeping the story moving and utilizing the characters well. But oftentimes when you have more than one villain in there, it just becomes distracting or overstuffed. and very, very rarely does it work out. And I really think that while having the addition of and Carmine Falcone was also in there too. He wasn't like a huge player, but he was part of the story of moving the drugs throughout Gotham and, buying off the police force and all that stuff. And then you have Scarecrow, and then you have Ra's al Ghul. I think you probably could have chosen one and been stronger. Although I guess, on the other side of that coin, being that I am a very big comic fan, you usually have multiple villains in one story. So I guess I can appreciate it, but also feel like it maybe didn't add a ton to the story. So.
Well, did you have anything you did like about this movie, John?
Yeah, I mean.
I'm just kidding.
I feel like I guess I have kind of come off as negative. No, I mean, there is a lot that I did like. I really like Alfred's relationship played out on screen with Bruce. Specifically, there's one scene in particular that I love, and it's after Scarecrow uses his fear toxin on Batman for the first time, and they light him on fire, and he's, he calls Alfred, and he's just basically screaming,
Right.
And Alfred comes and picks him up, and he's driving him back home, and Bruce is like laying down on the back seat of the car. His suit is still smoking, and he's just rambling like a madman, like not making sense at all. Like, I'm poisoned, he keeps saying it over and over again. And Alfred's driving just in tears.
Yeah.
Like, he's so choked up, and he's crying. And I love that scene because it's, there's no dialogue outside of like Batman just kind of, doing his nonsensical rambling. But exactly what Alfred is thinking, why he's thinking it, why he's hurting. You're able to connect with that character in a meaningful way. And it's just, for him, he has nobody else.
Right.
His life and his duty has been serving the Wayne family. A true servant. I mean, literally, that is his job. And Thomas and Martha were murdered, so his life's duty has been to protect Bruce. And now Bruce has decided that he's going to go on this personal adventure of being a vigilante to protect Gotham. And he might end up killing himself. He is in the line of fire and in this danger. And that would have to be unbelievably hard to carry as Alfred. But then too, seeing somebody not be in their right mind whatsoever, I mean, it'd just be heart-wrenching. So I love that scene.
Yeah.
And I also do love the scene when Bruce pretends to be drunk and kicks everybody out of the mansion. I think the dialogue is kind of funny where he's, saying you're all fake, you're posers. I mean,
Right.
It's just kind of funny just to think about because there is a lot of truth to that. Like in that upper elite wealth class that you don't know each other. Like, you're just here.
Yeah.
So that is kind of like real world ironic funny. But then in addition to that, just the idea that that's something that Bruce Wayne of the comics would do. Maybe not the exact way, because he does a really good job of maintaining his family's name. But it still did. It was good. I liked it.
Yeah, me too.
What did you like or dislike? You haven't really talked a whole lot.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to leave room because I know we have a guest coming on and we're already going over time. So
Good point. Okay. Well, I think that it's probably time to go ahead and introduce our guest then.
Okay.
Well, Josh, welcome back into the studio, man.
Hey, thanks for having me back.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. And we are excited to be talking about Batman Begins. So we'll just start out how we always do. Gut reaction. How would you rate this on a scale of 1 to 100?
On this one, I'm going to go with, I actually looked it up the other day. I'm going to go with the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes,
Okay.
which I believe is 94.
Oh, wow. Wow. Okay.
And I think that's also what I gave Gladiator, but
Okay.
I'll put it on par with that.
Yeah.
Ours were a lot lower.
Yeah. Ours were, so I think I gave it an 84 and you gave it an,
You gave it an 85
yeah.
and I gave it an 86.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. We, not for any reason other than we're trying to be better about leaving more room in the scale. But also, I think one thing that kind of was in my mind, just as rewatching it, was definitely like Robert Pattinson and the Batman, I feel like is done really, really well. And I would say that I prefer that interpretation of the Batman. And also, I think that The Dark Knight or The Dark Knight Rises is maybe a better, fuller Batman story. I think the Batman Begins is really, really solid and it's really good, but I don't know. I feel like that impacted my score.
Yeah, so I'll say that you can skew my score a little bit because I grade on a curve on this one because of the other two movies in the trilogy.
Yeah.
Standalone, to your point, the new Batman with Robert Pattinson, it's a whole different kind of storytelling.
Super different.
And I really did enjoy that. This one, I think, on its own, I would not give it a 94.
Okay.
Which I realize is the question you're asking.
Yes.
I don't want to talk out of both sides of my mouth, but it's hard for me not to view this one knowing what it follows up with.
That's fair. Fair.
So yeah, standalone, realistically, I'm probably upper 80s. I'd be higher than you. I'd probably give it 88, 89.
88? Okay. All right.
But in the context of starting the trilogy on that curve, I'd give it.
I will say I agree with you in terms of like it did really good job world building and establishing like a strong connection between Jim Gordon and Batman, and setting up just kind of where do we go from here. Not that I think that that's a burden this movie has to take on, but it did it well.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Cool. Okay. So things that stick out to you, things you want to talk about, favorite scenes, dislikes.
Ooh. Going back, dislikes, it's kind of central to the movie, but it's the whole Ducard, Ra's al Ghul thing. Like,
all right, I'm going to stop you right there. So this is fun fact. I'm not going to knock you for it, but Christopher Nolan and company actually pronounce Ra's al Ghul incorrectly for the entire movie as well as the trilogy.
Perfect. So how's it supposed to be pronounced?
The creator of the character has even come out and said, this is how you pronounce it. Oof. It is Ra's al Ghul.
Raish.
Yes, so it's an Arabic name. It translates to head of the demon, which a little intense. But anyways, it's R-A''S, and evidently, per him, is supposed to be pronounced Raish.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, then I guess in a way, I get points for saying that because the name was pronounced wrong the whole movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I liked the twist. I really liked the training scene kind of towards the end before he takes them down when they basically ask him to do the final test.
Right.
But I don't know. To me, maybe it's recency bias. The fact that this movie is when did it come out?
2005.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's been almost 20 years. Like,
yep.
I guess I've seen a lot better twists. Like,
yes, I agree 100%.
Yeah. But I mean, obviously a minor gripe, but there's not a whole lot that I just only viewing this movie and not thinking about the next two that come.
Yep. Yeah. I think I talk about this a little bit earlier in the podcast, but I think really I don't have a lot of specific critiques other than like me being a comic book like super nerd. There are just some like tidbits here and there. Like I have some of the comics that this movie was inspired by.
Nerd alert.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So outside of things of that nature, I would say the only real critique that I have is that I feel like while Cillian Murphy did a phenomenal job as Scarecrow, and I can't remember the actor who played Carmine Falcone, he did a good job. And then you have Liam Neeson as Ra's al Ghul. That's 3 villains in the movie. They tie in well, and I, as a comic book nerd, very much appreciate the inclusion of more than just one person because that's how the comics are. There's a lot of overlap.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
However, I will kind of counter and say that I don't feel like their inclusion in the movie was maybe necessary. I feel like they potentially, especially Scarecrow, I like him in it.
I'd go with that one for sure.
Yeah.
It's maybe a little too much. I would say Falcone definitely because
he plays into
he
like
helps the foundational of kind of Bruce's transition to Batman with understanding crime world and obviously later in the movie the scene where Joe Chill.
Hey, very good. Nice.
When Bruce is basically wanting to get him after he's off his parole in that hearing. I I think you see that tug of war internally with the character.
Yeah.
Where he was planning on, he had the gun in his sleeve and he was going to kill him. Lady beat him to that.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think from a character, development standpoint, I think Falcone definitely needed to be in there.
Yeah, I agree. I think Falcone does a good job of, like, they use him well in tying him into, like, paying off the police and the judges and kind of the corruption of Gotham.
Right.
And so he's used well, and that's where I feel like he isn't necessarily a main villain in the movie, but he's another player, whereas Scarecrow, I feel like, is kind of headlined as the villain of the movie. But when you really look back and think about everything that happened, he didn't do a whole lot. Yeah. And I think they probably could have just done with the League of Shadows and Ra's al Ghul.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Something I like, the rest of your question, I really like the cinematography and the score.
Yeah, I agree.
I think some of the visuals that are in this movie, especially if you think back, 18 years or whatever.
Yeah.
It's really transition scenes that capture your eye, but then the score also, like any good score does, underscores, no pun intended, whatever that scene is, and helps aid the feeling of those particular moments.
Yeah.
I think those, aside from acting and the plot and everything, like those are good elements in those movies. And I think Christopher Nolan on the cinematography front from all of his other films usually gets high marks for that, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. His cinematography, actually, fun fact about Christopher Nolan that I didn't know until researching for this movie, he refuses to have a second unit for all his films, which essentially means allowing other people to do shots in the movie. He will not allow a second unit because he wants to be in control of his shots. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, more power to him because everything looks great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, sweet. Okay. Well, we do have some trivia for you.
Oh, boy.
Yes. So I will start. True or false? This was the first live action appearance of the villain Scarecrow.
Start me off at 50-50, and I'm not even sure. Live action Scarecrow. Boy, there are so many Batman movies prior that I have not seen. I'm going to go out on a limb and say this is false.
Incorrect. This was the first live action appearance of Scarecrow, and that actually includes the 60s Adam West TV show, too.
Well, that's why I went false, because I know this goes way back, but, surprising.
Yeah.
Okay, next one. Who was the last actor to portray Batman before Christian Bale?
I want to say Michael Keaton. You mean like the one before? Or
the one right before Christian Bale.
The last live action Batman movie, who was the actor?
Yeah. That would be my only guess. I haven't seen any of the prior ones, really.
Try again. If you can't think of it, I can tell you the answer.
Yeah, you have to tell me.
George Clooney.
George Clooney played Batman?
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you not know this?
I did not know that.
Yeah, so it was Michael Keaton. He did 2 Batman movies, and then Val Kilmer.
Okay.
I think he did 1. And then it was George Clooney. And Clooney's movie was so bad that they took a 5 to 8 year break from any Batman movies.
It's been pretty bad then.
It might have been longer. It's revered as one of the worst comic book movies. George Clooney has publicly apologized for it.
Oh, I missed that apology.
Yeah. All right. In the movie, how long was Bruce Wayne away from Gotham?
He was away, I believe, for 7 years.
Yeah, correct. Very good.
Okay, this one you already said the answer to earlier, so you'll probably get it right. What is the name of the man who kills Bruce Wayne's parents?
Oh, yeah. Joe Chill.
Yes, good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very good. And that is comic accurate, by the way.
It is?
It is consistently Joe Chill who kills Thomas and Martha Wayne. And side note, one of the worst interpretations of the killing of Batman's parents comes in Michael Keaton's first movie, Batman '89, the first live-action Tim Burton, Michael Keaton movie. They did a big twist and revealed that the killer of Batman's parents was the Joker. And I hate it.
Yeah, I don't like that.
It's dumb. It's a classic Hollywood, like, oh, they're connected by some crazy means.
Some prior event.
Yeah, it's dumb.
It's reaching.
Yeah. Okay, final question. And this one's slightly complicated, so, ask for clarity if necessary.
Okay,
All right, so in the beginning of the movie, Liam Neeson is revealed to be Henry Ducard. but he actually later reveals himself to be Ra's al Ghul. There is a fake Ra's al Ghul in the movie.
I remember him, what he looks like.
Okay. So that fake Ra's al Ghul is played by an actor who is in another Christopher Nolan movie. What movie does he star in?
That's a great question. I honestly wouldn't even venture a guess on that one, though.
Inception.
Inception? Okay.
Yeah, he plays, I can't remember if it's Takeo.
It's been a while since I've seen that one.
Yeah. I think that was the character's name. It's who Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Leonardo DiCaprio first start the movie out with in the dream within a dream within a dream.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Yep.
Interesting.
Yes. Yeah.
Nice.
So that's all the trivia we had for you. Now, outside of this, it's kind of open season. Is there anything you want to talk about?
Yes. Well, briefly, one thing that probably isn't that funny, but I find it hilarious, is when Bruce goes to Lucius, finds out, all these prototypes and everything that's going on around there, and it gets going a little bit.
Yeah.
The line where I think he's just requesting more equipment or some things like that.
Yeah.
And Morgan Freeman is the character who plays Lucius.
Yeah.
And he's fantastic, but Bruce says spelunking as the reason for, they're going to ask questions when they look at this stuff. It's just tell them spelunking.
Yeah.
His delivery on that when he responds after, Christian Bale delivers that, I just find it really funny.
Yes.
Yeah.
Spelunking.
Yeah.
That was actually going to be one of the trivia questions I was going to ask.
Well, I would have gotten that one. But yeah, otherwise, I think it's well documented throughout the trilogy, kind of the themes that they carry through. But in this movie, I do think they do a great job of helping the audience understand this idea of fear.
Yeah.
In terms of Bruce's struggle turning into Batman, and all the parallels and all the symbolism and all the connections, even to his dad, out when he leaves the theater.
Yeah.
Because of the bat visual.
Yeah.
Even when he has been, I believe he was shot.
Mm-hmm.
And his final words were, "Don't be afraid."
Yes. Yep.
And so it's kind of right out there for the audience throughout the whole movie. And it's kind of obvious, especially with the bat symbolism turning into Batman. But
right.
I think it's a great movie from that standpoint in terms of, wrestling with fear.
Yeah.
And trying to, rise above that, whatever that may look like. And I think they develop different themes of things that can weigh on us in life in the subsequent second and third movies.
Right. Yeah.
But I found the whole thing interesting, the way that they told it about why, basically why he selected Batman as the character, because that's when he falls into the wells,
Right.
creates that fear, carries through, super tragic moment, losing his parents, and then that cave that the well turns into the cave, and he just full on takes on that persona.
Yeah.
But like we talked about kind of with Gladiator,
Yeah.
the man Bruce as a character not compromising on morals in the end with, Ra's al Ghul.
Yeah. Very, very good.
Ra's. Where it goes back to the test where he wants him to kill this guy who I believe was accused of some crime.
He was a farmer that had done, he did something.
And that was his test, and he said, "I'm not an executioner."
Right.
And then he sets the whole place on fire.
Right.
Probably killed some people.
Which inadvertently killed at least the fake Ra's al Ghul.
Yeah. But, in the end, he has the chance to take him out one-on-one in the train as Batman now.
Right.
And, basically flies off.
Yeah.
By effect, killing him by not saving him. But he's not the reason directly for...
Well, and on that note, Bruce has the opportunity to kill the real Ra's al Ghul prior to that when they're sliding off the mountain.
True.
And
he saves him.
Exactly. He not only doesn't kill him, but goes out of his way to save him from dying and brings him up to the village and lays him down in a guy's house to be cared for.
Which we'll file one last note under the critiques, because even my wife Amanda pointed out when we watched it last that when Ra's al Ghul comes to the little soiree party. Sorry.
Yeah.
They're having.
Yeah.
And him in the League of Shadows like, all right, it's time, because his mission was supposed to be Gotham. They're
Yes.
going to do it since Bruce won't.
Right.
And sets his place on fire, and Bruce is under a big beam or something.
Yeah.
And he, Liam Neeson's character says, I'm going to leave you the way you left me. Like, no,
He didn't.
Yeah,
he didn't. He did a lot more than just
saved
leave
your
you there.
life.
He saved your life.
Yeah. He's like, you burnt my house down and left me for dead.
Yeah.
It's like, no, he took you up to a villager.
Yeah.
But it's very possible. I mean, the villager tells Bruce when he lays him down, he's like, I will tell him that you saved his life.
Right.
But I mean, maybe the villager forgot, and so he just thought that the villager picked him up.
It's possible.
Who knows?
Possible. I also like, very last thought.
Yeah.
Can't go without mentioning Pennyworth, who's played by
Michael Caine. Yeah.
But in that same scene when he's got the log on him,
Yeah.
he has a funny line where he's like, what's the point of doing all these push-ups if you can't, move this
Yeah.
Yep.
or whatever? That's kind of funny.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think Michael Caine plays Alfred perfectly. I love him. And I will also say that I think in The Batman with Robert Pattinson that Andy Serkis plays him wonderfully. I think we've been blessed with two very, very great Alfreds.
Gotta have a good Alfred.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see the future with Andy Serkis. But yeah, I think that Michael Caine nails kind of the surrogate father, if you will, role for Bruce. And you can tell, I talked about this earlier in the podcast before you came in, that it just really warms my heart, like seeing, there are so many scenes where Alfred doesn't say anything, but you know exactly how he feels, what he's thinking, especially when he picks Bruce up after he gets hit with the fear toxin from Scarecrow. He's basically just crying, and you know what's going through his mind. And Michael Caine does a phenomenal job.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. Is there anything else you want to cover before we close this one out?
No, man.
Okay.
I think it's great.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us again, Josh. We'll definitely have you back on the podcast here in the future.
Yes.
Yeah. But we appreciate you, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Well, thank you guys so much for listening, and another big thank you to Josh. We always enjoy our conversations with you.
Yes, thanks, big bro.
So it's so hard to believe. I mean, we've said it before. It's hard to believe that we are in season 2 of our podcast, but there's another podcast, John, that just started season 2 as well.
Yes, one of our friends, her name is Emma Conrad. Her brother and I are good friends. He's a faithful listener. Alex, shout out to you. Thank you for listening.
He won a t-shirt.
Yeah, Alex won a t-shirt. What a guy. What a guy. And his dad, Phil, I know he listens to the show. Shout out to Phil. But Emma has started the second season of her podcast called Say Less with M.
Yes, so check it out if you haven't. It is on Spotify, I know.
I'm sure it's on Apple Podcasts
I'm sure it's on,
too.
Yeah.
We'll link it in the description.
Yes. So all that to say, thank you guys for listening. And next week, we are going to be covering one of our all-time favorite Pixar movies, Up. So that is streaming on Disney Plus if you want to watch it at a time.
Such a great movie.
Such a great movie.
One of my favorite movies.
And we'll get into all of that, breaking that down next week. So have a good Halloween. Stay safe.
Yeah, stay safe, guys. Enjoy that candy. Make sure there's no razors or anything in your candy bars. Have you seen those memes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yes.
Thank you guys for listening. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, love you guys. Stay safe. Bye.